Okay, so welcome everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar about successful impact for H2020 projects. So this is the agenda of the topics we'll cover today. Just a quick welcome and intro. I will then go into the so in what the what we mean with impacting new projects. We will go into H2020 and then look at some of the key aspects, which are exploitation, dissemination, and stakeholder involvement. And then I will provide a bit of an overview of our of the Ciaotech expertise, and there'll be a Q&A session at the end. And overall, the webinar will be quite brief, so it is a bit of an introductory webinar, and we won't go too in detail in the topics. Then please do follow up if you find some of the topics I'll mention today interesting and you would like a more detailed follow-up. So we might organize a follow-up webinar. Okay, so yeah, we've said about muting. I think we're okay with that. So I'll just give you a little bit of information on who we are. We are Ciaotech. We are the Italian brand of P&O. We are a leading grants and innovation management consultancy in Europe, where we operate in about 12 countries, and we have more than 2,000 clients. We have lots of cross-sector specialists, and we participate in also in various European projects in different sectors. Spanning from ICT to biotech to environment and security. These are some of our a very small selection of clients and partners we work with, also in ongoing EU projects. So your host, my name is Lorenzo Sutton, as you probably know. So I've been working on European projects since FP6, which probably tells something about my age. And I'm an innovation management consultant, and I'm involved and have been involved in many European projects, and in particular with roles dealing with impact, so exploitation, dissemination, user engagement. So let's dive into today's subject, and let's look at impact. When there are keywords like impact, I always like to go back to the word definition. So the dictionary definition of impact is the effect or influence of one person, thing, or action on another. So what this definition tells us is that impact needs some action ongoing. It doesn't just happen. We have to plan it and push to create impact. So this shows a need to be very proactive attitude towards impact. Now, in European projects, why do we have to generate impact? Well, we are expected to generate impact because, after all, our projects are being funded by citizens' money, and so we must generate impact. And impact goes well beyond the time duration of the project. So obviously, during the project, we are generating a set of interesting research results, cutting edge results, but the European Commission requires us that these results don't die with the project, and they last and go beyond the project duration. And here I'm depicting a bit the circle. So here we have the citizens who are paying their taxes. The EC funds our project with that money, and so we're expected to give back to the European citizens, and we must generate impact so as to give back to the citizens. So if we want to define some of the main aspects in general of impact, we could say that projects can generate direct and indirect impact. So direct is obviously the outcomes of the project, which, depending on the type of project, can be the outcomes. It could be an environmental impact if it's a project dealing with the environment, new business, etc. The more indirect ones, and also I would say in this case long-term, and which should look beyond the time scope of the project, are of course the how our project is contributing to maybe create new jobs, grow the economy of a region or a sector. And again, as I said, there's a time domain. So we have short-term impacts and longer-term impacts. Both are obviously important. So if we start a new research project, we can probably have new jobs and new PhDs created around that project, and the results which are immediately delivered from that project, but also the longer term. So for example, new business or company or spin-off created after the project. And all of these aspects are important, and your project should be delivering impact in all of these dimensions, if we like. Now, what is the more specific situation and what the requirements in the context of Horizon 2020? Now, here I would like to introduce these three categories, and I use a metaphor which I call the streams, or if we think of how a river or a stream arrives at the sea. So we have a first wide impact stream, which we can think of like the delta of a river, which is very wide and has many ramifications. And this aspect is, for example, communication and dissemination. So how we create impact through communicating the project. And this kind of impact stream, in this kind of stream, it is important. The quantitative aspect is important. For example, for communication of a project, we want to reach a critical mass, and we are also using multiple channels. So in the case of dissemination, for example, we're using the web, we're using the press, etc., etc. So yeah, we can really think it's like a big delta. That picture is the Nile Delta seen from the satellite, which with many streams and many channels to create impact. Then we have the one which in the presentation is green, and which I've called the estuary kind of stream, which is more targeted. We can think of exploitation and marketing activities as generating this kind of impact. Here we have more of a balance between quantity and quality. Obviously, it is important to reach, again, critical mass, for example, if we're trying to market our project results, but it's important also to deliver quality, have a good plan. The channels which we are using to create this kind of impact and to go externally are more selected, if you like, a bit like in the estuaries, which have less channels. It means that we need very clear objectives for creating this kind of impact, and it also means that how the strategy we use to create this impact should evolve with the project. So when the project has just started, we will put forward certain strategies. As it evolves, as the results get more mature, the strategies will also evolve. And this is the kind of impact which should go well beyond the project duration. So again, if we think of exploitation, which I will talk about in more detail in the next slides, but that is what really goes beyond the project scope in terms of time. And then finally, there's a more focused kind of impact stream. And typical activities are validation, testing, user groups, all those activities where we have stakeholders, relevant stakeholders involved with a project. Here quality is very important. We have to ensure that the quality of our actions is very good, and that there is a very sound strategy in implementing impact. This is very well constructed. That's why I use the canal metaphor, because canals are man-made rivers, really streams. So there's much thought in it. In this case, this kind of impact creation is most effective actually during the project. So now in Horizon 2020, proposals are already projects already at the proposal stage. So when you're actually writing the project and submitting it to the EC, we are required to provide the expected impacts and indicate the socioeconomic impacts, and also provide the dissemination and exploitation plans. Obviously, dissemination and exploitation are two very important aspects and streams for creating impact. And so the Commission will actually evaluate already at the proposal stage these aspects. One type of call where especially exploitation, but impact in general, is very relevant. It is relevant in all calls, but one kind of call is the innovation actions. So here there is a technology readiness level which is expected to be fairly high, and so proposals really need to provide a sound dissemination and exploitation plan in this context. But remember that impact is relevant for the score of a proposal you're writing, and so the strategy should be clear already at this stage. And so I've mentioned exploitation, dissemination, and now we will go a bit into the detail of these aspects of impact creation. So exploitation, and here I have this cartoon. So you've probably seen this. I didn't invent this, and it says that we have an invention, like for example the wheel, but we only have innovation once we put this invention to good use. So in this case, for example, we have a primitive man. He's made the wheel, and then he's made a bicycle, and that's an innovation. Now the next step would be that exploitation goes beyond that, and for example creates a business around the bicycle. So we have our friend here who's set up his bikes.com and is actually creating a business. Just a quick interruption. Valentina is asking if we're going to provide the presentation. Yes, we are recording this presentation and we will provide it to all participants, and we'll also create a video out of it. So it will be available after the webinar, once the recording is available, and we do a little bit of editing, and we'll definitely put it online, and everybody will be able to view it. So who had some technical problems today, or maybe your colleagues who couldn't attend, and we'll be happy to put it in the public. So now here is something a bit more official, and well, very official, because this is actually the definition which the Parliament regulation about Horizon 2020 gives of exploitation. And so it means the use of results in further research activities other than those covered by the action concerned, or in developing, creating and marketing a product or process, or in creating and providing a service, or in standardization activities. And this is quite straightforward, I think. I think what's important here is that the official regulation also, if you remember what I said earlier, so we're using public funds, and it is important that each participant in the project, I've highlighted that each participant because it's important to remember that all partners in a project should be involved and should have some effort in exploitation. This is really one of the tasks which should have a collaborative and participated effort, regardless of the type of partner. And that's what also the European Parliament tells us, that each participant should put its best efforts to exploit the results. Here I like to go a bit into the detail of some of what I think from my personal experience and from our experience in Ciaotech in participating in many projects about key elements of exploitation. So the first step, obviously, for a project is to actually identify which are the exploitable results, and this list, this inventory, if you like, should be kept updated throughout the project, and I will add, should be made early in the project. So our very nice projects are delivering important, innovative results. We should think of how these results can be exploited. And here I would like to go a bit into more detail here and provide an example. So we were involved in a project I will present later, and this project, among the results, was a really cool application, IT application, so web application, for the fashion sector, and it was very successful. It was presented, it was used in the exploitation activities. Now obviously that is a very important exploitable result, because it holds a very strong value. Obviously an application like that one is actually, like many ICT applications, the result of other project results. So for example, innovative libraries, innovative methodologies, etc., etc. When looking at your project results, you should also consider these more granular, if you like, modular results, because they may hold an exploitation value. And this should be done early in the project. Now this might seem counterintuitive, because when we start a project we may not have some of the results, or we may only have them on paper, they're not mature enough. But still we should already have, let's say, the exploitation mindset, and see and think how we would like to exploit them, which could be the possible markets for these results, even if they don't exist. And this makes sense, because if we only think of the exploitability of results at the end of the project, it might be too late, and we might have to run and struggle to actually push them outside of the project. Regarding IPR, obviously IPR is a very big topic. It could be the subject for a webinar itself, and if this is interesting, I'd be happy to hold one. But here I'd like just to give three important elements. Clearly the first element is that there should be already early in the project, and I would say even at the proposal stage, an understanding and agreement between all the parties involved on how the IPR will be managed, and especially what the ownership will be. Not much during the project, because the EC requires us to share results and to enable other project partners to access the the technologies we are putting in the project, but after the project. So what we are delivering these cool results, we think they're exploitable, we have to have an agreement on who owns them and what the IPR is. So for example, if we agreed that all partners after the project will have access to the results royalty free, or have some agreements on the intellectual property. This is really important, because if there is no agreement, if there is no strategy about the IPR, it may be a showstopper for actually exploiting those results, and in turn for creating impact after the project. So it's sometimes not an easy activity. It should be managed by someone who has experience in these issues, and also which has the capability to help partners to find an agreement, to mediate and negotiate about intellectual property. Two aspects of IP which are also relevant are, in some projects, it might be interesting and viable for certain IP to look at patenting. Now, patenting is also a complicated issue. It is expensive and time-consuming, but it is foreseen for certain results in projects, and obviously it can give you an advantage in exploiting the results. Again, there should be an agreement and a strategy, and results which you think could go to the patent route should be identified early in the project, because it's a long process, and it should be thought of at the beginning. And another aspect for IP and exploiting intellectual property is standards. So some projects, wisely, I would say, even devolve some effort and resources to standardization, and obviously standardization is a good means to also push your IP. Again, it's not an easy process. It is long, it is complex, you have to be in, so to say, the right circles. But often partners which join projects are already on, so to say, standardization tables. So in that case, consider standardization, especially for results of the project which are, let's say, less tangible. So methodologies, etc. So for example, if your project were implementing an innovative methodology, let's say, I don't know, for waste management, it might be interesting to try and standardize that, to present to some standard body that methodology, and that obviously it's quite straightforward to see how this will give you also an advantage in exploiting the results. Obviously, for exploitation, we need to have a market and needs analysis, so which is the possible market segments and market targets for our results we want to exploit. A market analysis should start also early in the project and obviously should be refined, and the needs should also be assessed. Now, one important aspect, though, I've just mentioned market, is that exploitation is not necessarily only commercial. And I think this is relevant in projects, especially because from my experience, I've seen that sometimes, for example, universities, research centers, or NGOs, they can have some difficulty in getting into the exploitation strategy and effort, because they say, well, we are not commercial, so we don't have necessarily an interest in the commercial aspects. Now, exploitation is impact not only from a commercial point of view. Obviously, the commercial point of view is important, but we should also think of research, new jobs, and in general growth for the partners. So here, obviously, this depends a lot on the kind of project, but you should also look at other ways to exploiting the results, especially after the project period. So if you're a university, use those results in further research, be it in other projects or in your own research. If you are an NGO, Try and find agreements with other partners, for example, to continue using the results maybe at no cost or at low cost because you were part of the partnership, and find these kind of agreements. Obviously, all of this has to be clearly planned, and a strategy must be put forward since the beginning. I'm stressing this aspect of thinking of the strategy since the beginning, because in some project exploitation is kind of delayed to the end phases. Obviously, in the end you have a better vision, but this should start at the beginning and be updated incrementally. It's important, obviously, as I already mentioned, that each partner's vision in the exploitation is important, and each partner should have their voice. This should really be a collaborative effort. So you should set up tools to ensure that all partners are participating, regardless of the type, and if they're commercial or not. And actually, this is one of it will enrich your exploitation if each partner can share their vision. Also, in the exploitation, you should involve external stakeholders and look at exploitation opportunities. So sometimes exploitation is a bit of an internal exercise to projects. It's important to hear experts from outside. There are various tools which you can use. There are interviews, focus groups, especially aimed at exploitation, etc. And this goes together with exploitation opportunities. What do I mean with exploitation opportunities? Obviously, we have to have a plan and strategy, but sometimes exploitation opportunities just come by chance, if you like, or in certain contexts. So, for example, if a partner is at a company meeting, they can present the project, and maybe one of their clients will show interest for the project, or also during the dissemination activities. And all partners should be in a way trained and know which the exploitation strategy is, because if these exploitation opportunities, so for example, the opportunity to sign an agreement with an external stakeholders comes up, they should have the tools and be prepared to pick up those opportunities. And again, I will just to make it even clearer, act since early in the project. Now to dissemination. I won't go too much here again, there's an official definition which the Parliament regulation gives us, and I guess that dissemination is more straightforward. So it is essentially the public disclosure of the results, communication, and having it known to a wide and relevant audience. One important aspect which is new in Horizon 2020 is open access. Again, open access is a wide topic and could be the subject of a webinar, but essentially it means that it is a way to help research be more accessible by other researchers. So, for example, if you're writing papers, it means that there are various modalities, but that paper will then be available for free to other researchers. And why for the Commission this is important, I think, is quite straightforward. Again, this is public money which is going into research, and so there is a strong value in having this research available to the widest audience possible and in the easiest and most open manner. In a similar way to exploitation, I will give you some key elements for dissemination. Dissemination should obviously be multi-channel, so you should use many channels. Today, obviously, we have the web, which is an important channel, websites, social networks, but also consider the more traditional channels like print, press, books, and traditional articles. Of course, it should be multi-channel and multi-audience, but it should have focus. So obviously, depending on the type of project, you should select the most effective channels and use your resources on those channels. So just to make a very trivial example, if your project is dealing with business processes in manufacturing, and so you think that a relevant audience would be, let's say, the more, so to say, business people, it probably makes sense to invest more resources on social networks such as LinkedIn, which is a more business-oriented social network, than maybe Facebook. Or so obviously multi-channel, but not just general broadcast. Try and be focused. Quantifiable targets should be set for dissemination. So you should think of some, let's say, performance indicators, some targets if you liked. And these targets should be monitored. And if you're not reaching those targets, find corrective measures. So an example would be if you have a website, you should set some targets for hits, or for a newsletter, how many people should be subscribed, etc. And you should measure those targets constantly and take action if you're not meeting those targets. And obviously I said that quantity is important for dissemination, but quality is also important. So invest in having quality materials. Obviously this is communication after all, and it should be appealing, it should look professional. Websites should be intuitive. They should deliver all the information about the project to a wide audience. Obviously, leverage each partner's dissemination channels. So, for example, research partners such as universities, research centers, they go to conferences. It's important to use those events and those opportunities where they already attend to disseminate the project. In a similar way, industrial partners usually go to trade fairs and industrial events. Again, the project can be disseminated in those channels, and they are important because the partners know exactly the kind of audience which is present in these events, because they usually attend them already, and so they can also tailor the communication to these events and make it more effective. And as I said earlier, keep in mind the open access philosophy. So not only try and push open access for your project, but also try and disseminate as much as possible and make your results open. So for example, if you have very interesting reports which you're writing in the project, and you think they're good quality and they can be used for dissemination, think maybe of making a digested version of these reports and disseminating them on the project website. And that is very effective kind of open philosophy for disseminating your results. Finally, I will talk of another aspect of impact creation, which is stakeholder involvement. So to create impact it's important also to involve relevant stakeholders. These are, let's say, activities which are not strictly related to exploitation or dissemination, but more activities which you would usually do in projects anyway, such as user groups, focus groups, user testing, validation, user requirements activities. So all those activities where you're involving external users. And they're important occasions not only to present the project, but also to get valuable feedback. And if you manage to set up a fruitful loop with these stakeholders, you can actually create impact. And again, some key elements. So this is neither dissemination nor exploitation. So you should be quite balanced when presenting the project. I said here you're not selling the project. Selling, obviously, I mean it in a good way. Obviously, when we're communicating, disseminating, and exploiting the project, we're trying to show it in the best light. When interacting with stakeholders, for example, I'm thinking of user group activities or focus groups, we should be neutral and be open also to constructive criticism. And in the long run, this will be good for the project and actually provide us valuable feedback and help us improve the project. Stakeholders should obviously be representative for the project and be of quality. So try and find experts in the field and provide quality activities. If you're organizing a user group, make it a quality experience and a good, fun, quality experience people will remember. This will pay back. And again, if we think of the impact creation, it means you will have people which have seen the results and can provide very valuable feedback. And this feedback obviously should be fed back into other impact creation activities, such, for example, exploitation. So a trivial example would be if you have certain results which you think are good for exploitation and you get feedback in the user groups or in the validation activities, that feedback might be very valuable in the exploitation. And again, in one of the projects I'll present in a few moments, this happened because we did both exploitation and some validation activities in the fashion sector, and some of the validators were experts, and they also gave us some feedback, for example, on the business models they would be interested in. And obviously this was fed back into the exploitation because that is very relevant. And I think that stakeholder involvement, if done right, can dramatically improve overall impact. And obviously it must be done right, and so it requires some work and resources in the project. So keep this aspect in mind. To pay back stakeholder involvement, it's not just pure dissemination. It means you actively have to work with people, talk to them, and manage this activity very carefully. Okay, so after providing this overview of the key aspects of impact, going into exploitation, dissemination, and stakeholder involvement, I'll just give you a very brief overview of our personal experience. And so, as I said earlier, we participate in different projects in different sectors, and we manage or are heavily involved in the activities I've described earlier. Some of what we think are our assets, and which we think, and more than us, other partners in projects and we've worked in have found valuable, is the fact that we've got cross-cutting experts in different domains, and so we have that expertise where we have specialists also in innovation management, market and business analysis, communication, validation, and user interaction. And this kind of expertise, we can have these people which we have in the company involved in the projects. So we have people who know about communication, who can provide support to dissemination, market analysis for exploitation, etc. And we found this very valuable and very effective in carrying out these activities. As I said, we are present in 12 countries, so we have a very wide pan-European network available, and this has been very, very valuable for us in all of those activities where we have to involve external stakeholders, for example, as I mentioned earlier, or in the dissemination and exploitation activities, because our network covers many sectors. And we can easily reach for example, the experts in a sector quite quickly and quite effectively. For example, if we have to set up questionnaire or interview activities or focus groups, and our network has proved very valuable in our projects. And we also, obviously, we are one of the leading grants consultancies, so we also write and have written many successful projects. So we have a vision of a project flow, if you like, since the writing of the project up to participating and conducting activities in the project, and after the project, because we've been involved in many exploitation activities. And now I'd like to present a couple of projects which I've picked among the many ones we have been and are involved currently in. The first one is Kubrick. And Kubrick is a project which lasted 3 years, and it just finished. The review was in November. The final review with 15 partners coordinated by engineering, and it delivered a really cool platform for multimedia search, and it was adopting really innovative concepts in multimedia search such as human in the loop, crowdsourcing, and serious gaming. And we were quite proud of the fact that it was rated excellent at the final review with the reviewers and the commission. And we managed the exploitation task and had a strong role in the validation, especially in one of the applications, which was an innovative multimedia and social network search application in the fashion domain. Here we worked as a subcontractor for one of our long-standing partners, who is an IT partner. And I must say there were quite a set of successful exploitation actions already put forward during the project. For example, a set of memorandums of understanding with important companies outside the project were signed already before the project, and now so the project actually has finished. The review has been done, but there are ongoing discussions for creating new business also with some of the fashion companies, and so this was a very nice project to work in, and a very nice platform. And you can find details on the website, of course. And here I've just taken some of the screenshots of this really cool app dealing with fashion and dresses. So it was a really nice project. Another completely different project is Gamma, which is an ongoing project. It is a big integrated project which will last until 2017 with a quite important budget, around 50 million. And we are partners in this project together with other 18 partners from each countries. We have big players in the avionics sector, so Airbus, Boeing, Thales, and it's coordinated by Selex, a Finmeccanica company. And this project is developing emerging air traffic management solutions. So air traffic is evolving, it's getting smarter with new technologies, but this also poses risks and vulnerabilities. So the project is actually trying to assess these vulnerabilities and come up with innovative solutions to tackle them. And here, as I said, we are partners. We are proud partners of this project, and we are leading some of the user group activities, which are quite important because obviously the final users must assess and test these solutions. And we're also involved in exploitation. I have some key roles in dissemination activities, where, for example, we have developed and we are maintaining the project website. So again, there's a link to this project website here, and this is a very exciting project, and we're really happy to be part of it. So that ends my presentation. We are exactly 45 minutes in, and now I would like to go to the Q&A. I would kindly ask you to use the text box for the questions, and we'll also obviously we have about a quarter of an hour, so I'm not sure if we'll be able to answer all questions, but what we'll do is we'll take note of all the questions, even the unanswered one, and what I'll do is I'll try and aggregate them and maybe prepare also an FAQ on the questions and topics, and share it after the presentation. So any questions? Please, I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, so viewer 93 is asking, what are the key differences between communication and dissemination? Okay, Jamie. Yeah. Well, I guess that in many contexts, in European projects, if you like, they're nearly synonyms. I think that dissemination was used as a term to be slightly broader. So dissemination, for example, includes writing and submitting peer-reviewed articles, so scientific articles to journals or posters or conference presentations. So maybe communication usually is intended more in the kind of marketing and communication meaning, and dissemination is a bit broader and it includes, for example, if you like, scientific communication, more commercial communication. So I hope this answers Jamie's question. I think they're quite interchangeable terms in many contexts, but dissemination is somewhat broader. Okay, so viewer 31 is asking, what kind of things should be avoided in the impact section? I guess which are the common errors? Okay, so I think he or she is referring to the proposal stage. So when we are writing, when we're writing a proposal. Good question. What things should be avoided? Well, I think that what should probably be avoided is to overstate. So obviously it is important that our impact is and our preliminary plan is convincing, but it should also be realistic. So obviously you cannot claim at a proposal stage that your website will have millions and millions of viewers and that is your target. The target should be convincing but realistic, and I think that finding that balance so that the impact section is effective and convincing without being overstated is a bit of a black magic, an art for the project. Obviously, it depends on the kind and size of project. Obviously, for a big project with many industrial partners, which is an innovation action, so with an advanced technology readiness level, you are expected to have an important commitment on exploitation. And I would say a common error is also to have a very generic kind of ready-made exploitation, which is not tailored to the project. So when you are, not only exploitation, impact. So the impact should not be just a very generic kind of ready-made section, which is the same for all projects, but it should be thought and tailored well for the project. So in the question, which is the common error? The common error is making it very kind of impersonal, if you like, and not tailored to the project. Hope that answers the question. Okay, do letters of support written by stakeholders at the proposal stage really help support the impact session? Or are they so common and easy to obtain that their impact is minor in most cases? This is viewer 23. I think this is a good question. I think that support letters should be there if they give concreteness and, as the term says, they really support the impact section. This obviously depends on the project. I wouldn't say that support letters are essential for a proposal. But so, for example, if in your impact section, for example, let's go back to the example of the waste management. Let's say that in that section you said that you will, even if they're not partners, you will involve local communities and citizen associations to help make all citizens aware. Obviously, if you do have support letters from that kind of stakeholder, it is relevant and it supports your impact section, because you're stating that you'll get support from these associations, and they are also signing that they will support you. So it makes this more concrete. Obviously, if the letter of support is just the kind of typical, very generic, again, if it's very impersonal, the kind of letter of support which is just, I mean, something which somebody signed without knowing the project, etc., probably the evaluator will spot that. And so maybe it's not really so important to have it. So I think the key is really to have a very effective impact section and impact strategy. And obviously the support letter, if it is concretely supporting that impact section, it should go in, and it can obviously help. I hope that answers. Viewer 93 is asking, where relevant, should a preliminary IPR ownership agreement be agreed by partners and included in the proposal? Jamie, yeah, absolutely. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily have to be a very detailed agreement, because we know that at proposal stage, there's lots of stuff to do, and concretely, it's hard to have a very detailed agreement. But at least some sort of agreement where the basic principles are agreed should be there. And for example, if there is an agreement about, I don't know, having certain results available after the project royalty-free between partners, and that there is a general agreement, etc. Yes, that should be put forward. And I think that it's important here to show already in the proposal that there won't be trouble about the IPR. So it doesn't have to be very detailed, also because we don't have time, and also because the space is not much. But having some agreed principles among all the partners and writing them down already in the impact section is definitely relevant. Thank you, viewer 93. So any other questions? Feel free to ask. Okay, it looks like there are no further questions. I'll just put up this slide here. These are some of the upcoming calls. And if you are interested in these calls, if you are thinking of projects, do get in touch with us, because we're also interested in possibly supporting you. And obviously, as I said, we are involved in many projects covering impact-related activities, so exploitation, dissemination, stakeholder involvement, and we have a strong expertise, and so we are interested in joining also interesting projects as a partner or subcontractor, depending on what also your ideas are. So please do get in contact with us for any project ideas and proposals, and we'll be happy to discuss them. Of course, please do send us some feedback about the webinar. Your opinion is very important for us. And also, if you would like maybe a follow-up webinar to go into detail on some of the topics which today I only touched briefly because of time, please let me know, and maybe we can organize a follow-up on that topic if we see it is interesting for many people. So I guess that if there are no further questions, we can, I guess we are at 1 hour right now. And thank you everyone for participating. It was a pleasure for me to hold this webinar, and I hope we can collaborate further and maybe meet in our next EU project and successfully create impact in this project. Thanks again, and bye everyone, and have a nice day.